Welcome back to Talking Shop, a series of fun conversations with consummate concert artists, composers, opera singers, and choreographers. Today, I am so very happy to have a new friend, Kenneth Law. He is a highly acclaimed cellist and is a performer, a teacher, and an author. He's a member of the Main Street Chamber Players, the Davenport Chamber Players, the Cirrus Ensemble, and the Color of Music Festival. Ken's career as a soloist and a chamber player spans illustrious venues, including the Washington Performing Arts Club, the German Embassy in Washington, D.C., the Kennedy Center's Terrace Theater, the Metropolitan Museum of Art, the Library of Congress, Alice Tully Hall in New York City, and Carnegie Hall with the Color of Music Festival Chamber Players. He has performed all over the world, collaborating with ensembles and orchestras, in addition to doing solo performances. He maintains a large private studio in Fairfax, Virginia, and his students have secured acceptances at prestigious music schools, including Peabody and Oberlin Conservatories, Cleveland Institute of Music, Indiana University, and many, many others. He co-authored a series of chamber music guides titled We Are the Music Makers, a graded guide to chamber music string quartets, published in 2013. He has received numerous awards, including the NAACP Image Award as a member of the Ritz Chamber Players, and was also a chamber music fellow at the Juilliard School. I know him personally as a magnificently insightful interpreter of my piano cello piece, Breaking the Walls, which was recently premiered in New York State by the Davenport Chamber Players. And my goodness, what a lovely meeting that was. And I just love our quickly formed friendship. And I'm just really delighted to have you here today. So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. So I'm going to ask you the question I ask all of my first time guests related to their specialty. And that is, what does being a cellist, a chamber musician, and an educator mean to you on a personal level?
That is a very loaded question, Lisa. I think probably the most important thing as a cellist, performer, teacher, for me is the ability and the desire to communicate. I think as a performer, it's very important to me to communicate not only the composer's intent for their music, but it's also very important that they understand and appreciate the passion that I have when I perform as well. As a teacher, I want to transfer that I do on the stage into my studio so that they can see and they can appreciate and develop for themselves that desire to perform. I think it was the author as well. Were you
Yes.
asking?
Yes.
As a, okay. And then also, I think I mean, that was kind of late in the process. I didn't realize that I could do that. But as an author, it's down on page. It's down on paper now. It's the guide helps teachers or coaches, actually, if they have a chamber ensemble that is of varying levels of proficiency. They're new, they don't really know exactly how to pick a piece for this particular group, because it would be rather difficult to have a violinist who's playing Tchaikovsky violin concerto and a cellist playing like French folk song, something like that. It's the varying degrees. So this guide helps them. It provides them a resource. So I guess I guess that's another form of communication as well. Just helping others so that they can be uh, feel confident and competent in what they're doing as well.
Yeah. I love asking that question because it seems like a pretty simple question, but invariably I get, just every answer imaginable. And I love everybody's individual perspective. And you're the first person who has mentioned communication. And I think that's really, really amazing because as artists, we are trying to establish that connection, with the audience. If we're
Absolutely.
performers, and I think most of the people that I interview for this series are performers, basically, in some sense. Maybe not just
Mhm.
performers, but that is a big part of their lives. So I'd like to follow that with what do you love most about performing? And feel free to just kind of go back and tell us your story because I love hearing how people got involved. You know, at what point did you realize, oh my gosh, this is what I have to do with my life? I can't
Yeah.
be anything else. This just was meant for me. Um, and the different types of performing, because you perform solo, you perform with chamber, you perform with orchestras. Are those, is the preparation for those types of performances different from each other?
Mhm.
How do you feel each one? So that's a hugely loaded question, starting with your story and get into everything, and then, let's see what happens after that.
Sure, 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 sure. Well, I think, for me, I came into music and I came into playing the cello specifically. Actually, I played piano first and then I um, switched over to cello. But um, cello was where, and again, the word communication is just permeates throughout my life. When my very first cello teacher just made me fall in love with the instrument. I mean, he would play a piece for me, and if I smiled, we worked on it. If I didn't smile, we didn't work on it, that kind of thing. And so I was able to play things that I really enjoyed. Um, I think it wasn't until maybe about a year in, we were having a lesson, and he said, you're and oh, I need to preface it by saying that I remember that I was not feeling well. I was kind of sad, or something had happened that I wasn't my usual self. And so he said, "Well, you're playing sad today." And I thought, "Wow, how do you? I guess that's how you play sad. I guess I can play what I feel."
Yeah.
And so that was the start of my connection, my emotional connection, and my, for lack of a better word, my academic connection with the cello. Um, I could play sad, I could play happy, I could play excited, I could play agitated, I could play all these different emotions. And I was, growing up, I was a rather, still am to a certain extent, kind of an introverted kind of person. I wasn't, one of these, extroverted, outgoing people. I just, I was, when you spoke to me, I spoke back.
Sure.
But, and I was the nice kid and that kind of thing, but I wasn't emotive, let's put it that way. But put me behind an instrument, and that allowed me an emotional outlet. And so that's kind of how cello became such an important part of my life, because it was the way that I communicated with the world. It was the way that I let people know how I felt, and it was a very comfortable thing for me as well. So in my performing, that's a very important uh, characteristic, characteristic of what I do. I want to make sure that my audience knows what I feel when I play. Not only when I play a particular piece, but how I feel while I'm playing it. I'm enjoying playing it. I want you to understand that. With regard to performing, I think that my personal performing, that's kind of what has been my thing all the time. And so performing solo, performing chamber music, performing with an orchestra, I think that desire to communicate is there now. It's different though, because when I perform with an orchestra, there's a certain sense of camaraderie there. We're all in it together. I'm in the cello section. Yay, cellos, we're going to do it, kind of thing. And so the performing is for the conductor. We're trying to convey the conductor's idea. Okay, so I'm really putting in my 110% to convey what the conductor wants me to convey. So that's one way of performing, or one way that I feel performing in an orchestral situation. In a chamber music situation, it's a little bit more intense, because now the ensemble itself is an identity, and as an identity, or as an entity, we want to convey a certain interpretation. And so it's what I feel the music should be and how it interacts with the others. And so in the case of a string quartet, I was in a string quartet profession for several years. As a string quartet, we talk about the interpretation. We talk about what we want to do. We talk about how we're going to achieve a certain character or a certain quality. Um, and we each put in our, 25% because, if every part is equal. So I put in 100% of 25%, and everyone else does that as well. And so that would be how, performing chamber music would how I would characterize that.
Well, and I love that. And when you first started talking about that, I thought, okay, so it's more your interpretation, but and you answered the question, that I'm about to ask, but it was like, okay, if everyone is doing their own interpretation, how then do you get, a cohesive presentation from the group? And of course, you discussed that beforehand of what you all want. But within that, I think it's just really interesting playing as a chamber musician on occasion myself is the wonderful ability in chamber groups, I think, to allow each person to have their own interpretation within that whole vision for the group. To me, that's really, really fascinating.
And the spontaneity of it as well. I
Yes.
mean, there's you can you can you can agree on one thing, and when you're in the moment, it can take completely different route. And if you're not clued in and your antenna are, are sensing and feeling things, it can kind of fall apart.
Yeah.
But if you're all in agreement, if you all are working on a rather an intimate level, then that tangent can totally be realized. Yeah, yeah. So, and then also in terms of performing as a soloist, and I actually, I let's see, what you asked, as a chamber musician, as a soloist,
And an orchestra
performing
and orchestrally.
okay, okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, okay. So as a performer, as a soloist rather, um, that's probably, I have to say, that's probably my least favorite. Simply because I feel as though it, I'm out in front of the orchestra as opposed to being inside the orchestra. The orchestra is accompanying me as opposed to, and so actually what I do is I make it into a chamber, that chamber music experience.
Okay.
I kind of feel as though the orchestra is filling in and supporting the characters that I put forward. And I try to make it as interactive as I possibly can. It's all I can do to stop and not turn around to see what's going on back there, because
Yeah.
I'm really playing to them and wanting them to play to me. But that's probably the most challenging for me, I think, because it's one person, and it just seems that that's not how I came to music.
Yeah. Yeah.
I came to music I'm from a musical family. My mother was a pianist, my sister was a flutist, and so I was able to have chamber music in the house at a very early age. And so I've always had this sense of collaboration, and that was instilled. And so that, I think, that is what I feel I'm a chamber musician much more successfully than I am a soloist or orchestral player.
Yeah.
Um, so, and I think I said them probably in the order of preference too.
It doesn't matter. That's great. I want to go a little bit deeper with that. And, when I was reading your introduction, it listed you as members of different chamber groups. And I realized it's probably not all at once. You're probably not performing with all of those groups at the same time, but there's a history there. But the question comes to me, and you've been in my house, with the Davenport Chamber Players, which was just such a delight. And what I loved about that experience, and also being included in that experience as a composer in that case, was the professional way everyone worked together. I think it was so thrilling to have. I mean, there weren't any egos in the room. It was just everybody was super focused on the music, and there was a lot of joy. I felt a lot of joy there because everyone was so focused on the music. And even if we were trying to, do things a different way, see which way, would be right, quote, or, best,
Mhm.
or make everybody, be as true to the music or your feeling about the music as possible. Um, I don't, and however you want to do this, but are there different, and I know each chamber group has a different feel, I'm sure. So can you talk to me a little bit about working with in different chamber settings with different people? Um, what
Mhm.
is the skill set that someone needs to be able to do that effectively and hopefully achieve that same level of professional working together, camaraderie, and just really making that a fulfilling experience for everyone?
Mhm. Well, as you were talking, I was trying to think about what would be the best way to answer that question, and I think only one word comes to mind, and that is kindness. You just have to be kind in order to be a successful chamber musician, in my opinion. You have to think about how you would like to be spoken to, um, i- and and in turn, put it through, put your thoughts through a filter, and they come out, and they should be respectful, and they should be taking someone else into account. Uh, I've been in ensembles where there've been varying levels of proficiency. Everyone is, a great player, but
Sure.
there's some differences there. And so being able to get your point across without being offensive, for
Yeah.
one thing, is very important. Um, and then also just making sure that when you are forming the ensemble, that that the skill set is there, the similarity of skill sets is there, and the intent is there as well. The very first professional chamber ensemble I played in was a string quartet, and I have to say that string quartet was extremely successful because we were all very evenly matched, um, and we actually grew together. We were fairly young when we formed, and but we grew together. And as we grew, we became attuned to one another, and were able to. It started out being very, very, very polite. Because as musicians, as music majors, performance majors, chamber music class was a requirement for us,
Yeah.
and so we were actually put together by the faculty, to play together as a string quartet. And so there's four completely different people coming together to form this one entity. And so there was a lot of politeness going on. But as the years went on, as we were encouraged to stay together, it became shorthand. We knew, I know she loves me. She told me I'm playing flat, but I know she loves me. I'll work on it. I'll play sharp. I'll play higher again.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and that kind of thing. So I think probably the most important thing, in addition to being evenly matched, technically, and with regard to proficiency, I think, and musical artistry, I think,
Yeah.
is also just a sense of being kind to one
Yeah.
another.
Yeah, I love that answer. And what you said specifically about, I know she likes me, so I'm going to try to, bring the pitch up a little bit. I think that makes a huge difference because if you feel like you're working with people who want everyone to succeed, who want everyone to give their best, and there's no rivalry there, or there's no,
Mhm.
um, I don't know, people can, let me just put it this way, and I'm sure you've had experience like this. Some people can be very difficult to work with. And maybe for a variety of reasons. If you're at a
Mhm.
festival and you get lumped with, assigned to people, that can be a really interesting experience. I've, I've
Yes, it
experienced that
can be.
myself. So that's one
Yeah.
of the reasons I wanted to ask that question. Um, okay, so you have recorded orchestral and chamber works for three different labels: Albany Records, New Albion, is that the way to say
Hmm.
that? And then Telarc. Um,
Hmm.
does recording feel differently to you than performing live? And what's different about it? Do you prepare differently for recording than you do for a live performance? Is there a different mental preparation that you,
Hmm.
what's the approach there?
Well, to answer your question bluntly, yes, it is very different. It is very different than performing. For me, um, recording sessions and competitions are probably the most unnatural, sterile
Yeah,
kind of experience one can have. Um, in both of those situations, the expectation is very high, and you have to be, you in the case of a recording session, you want to be like a one take wonder basically.
sure.
You need to have your act together. There's no, well, usually there's no stopping. I mean, some recordings there are like a lot of splices going on there, but in the case of the recordings that I did for all of those, they were live performances. And so in the case of the New Albion label, that was with, I think that was with Ritz Chamber Players, and it was a recording of Music for Three by the composer, African American composer, George Walker.
Okay.
George Walker. And we played that concert. Fortunately, it was recorded. George Walker came up to us and said, "That was the most amazing thing. I need to record that. I need to put that on. I need to, which okay." And but it just happened that we had a really great performance that time. In a recording situation, though, whether it's studio recording or whether it's different types, there's a certain expectation that it just takes me out of my natural self. And I really feel as though it's very artificial and I need to nail this. I need to nail these notes. I need to make sure that I nail it. You know, I never think that way in a performance situation. I never think that way. I'm thinking, I get this opportunity to share this with this audience, and the pressure is off for perfection.
Yeah.
My sister and I used to have this argument where, she preferred Starker, Janos Starker, cellist. I prefer Rostropovich.
Yeah.
And Starker had a tendency to be just really technically, just incredible, impeccable technique, almost perfection.
Yeah.
Um, in my, for my taste, it wasn't as, pulling on the heartstrings as Rostropovich's recordings were.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas Rostropovich may not have been as accurate
Mm-hmm.
as Starker was. And my sister and I would just be like this the whole time, And so I feel as though the recording situation is kind of similar to that. I just approach it from and this is my own personal, I think my personal issues basically. I kind of approach it from a rather artificial standpoint.
Okay.
I can't seem to wrap my brain around the concept of, well, maybe if you thought of this as a performance, maybe you thought of this as a recital or a concert or something, maybe the experience will be better. But when there's a microphone like right there and there's a microphone right by your strings,
Yeah.
it's kind of hard to get yourself into that mindset. So I would have to say that, recording is not my favorite thing to do. I mean, I will do it, and I'm probably going to be doing it in the near future, but it's not my favorite thing to do.
So how do you prepare yourself, knowing that? How do you prepare yourself to deliver in that situation? Because you are a consummate
Mhm.
concert professional, and that's part of what you do. So,
Well, one of the things that you do is you just do it a lot.
yeah.
And by doing it a lot, you become aware of your strengths, you become aware of your weaknesses, what you need to prepare, what you don't need to do so much, in terms of mental preparation for. For me, I because it is a challenge for me. I really have to be mentally thinking about the microphones disappearing.
Yeah.
And I imagine that there is an audience out there. And I imagine that, and I actually practice that way. I practice that way. I have to close my eyes when I play, but I imagine that there's an audience out there. They're really appreciating, and they're there because they really enjoy being there. And as a result, my performing is a little bit better in the recording session because I'm able to kind of get rid of the stigma of
Yeah.
perfection
Yeah.
and be able to just be free to play. And actually, in that freedom comes a very high level of accuracy. So,
Yeah.
at least for me, there is.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that because I think that's one of the biggest challenges we have as performers is especially when we're under those high pressure situations, which can be a jury when you're in college, or it can be recording
Mhm.
or a competition, as you say. And to me, that's more the value than anything else of the competition, not necessarily winning. I mean, it's great if you win the prize, but the whole experience of being under that pressure. And to me, it's I guess in one way, a fairly safe way to do it because um, I don't know, if you're not focused on winning, sometimes that's even better. But if you just have that
Mhm.
experience, and you can have that experience often, there are lots of competitions around. So that's something that you can experience. And as you say, do it more often. So maybe that makes you a better recording
Yeah.
performer. Yeah.
That's something that I tell my students as well, when they're getting ready for auditions, because, with my pre-college, well, I teach all pre-college now, but for my students who are getting ready for like senior region orchestra, all state orchestra, those kind of honors orchestra type things, where where they have certain excerpts that they have to prepare and certain scales that they have to play in order to, and sight reading, excerpts and stuff like that. Just before they take their audition, we have a lesson where maybe the cello comes out, maybe it doesn't. But we just sit down and we talk about the whole process and the fact that um, for me, the goal is not for you to win. The goal is not for you to get in the orchestra. If that's a really nice byproduct,
Yeah.
the actual growth and the actual joy that we should get is the journey to there, to that event. Having the sense of accomplishment from having memorized 14 scales, having the feeling the accomplishment of being able to play this excerpt successfully, several times in a
Mhm.
row.
Mhm.
And we're human. So when we go into that situation, things could happen, and that's okay. The goal is when you walk out of there, do you walk out feeling good about what you did, that you did the best that you could? And that's the most important thing. So that's kind of where I sit with competitions and I guess in my case, recording sessions. If I
Yeah.
can walk out feeling like I did the best that I could, then I feel like I've done a good job.
That's awesome. Which is also just a perfect layup to the next question. What is, well, I want to go back before I ask that. I love visiting your website. Every guest I have, I do quite a bit of
I need to
research.
update it.
No, it's okay. Well, that's a constant thing, but I love researching my guests' websites and anything else I can find, accolades, critiques, anything. But when I went on your website, I went to this page that's titled Acclaim, and it made me so happy. And I wasn't sure what that was going to find there, and I was thinking, okay, this is going to be great. This is going to be the accolades, that he's received, blah, 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 which is all great. And, but instead, I found these testimonials and comments from all of your students. And oh my gosh, that just hit me as such a wonderful, wonderful thing. Um, how does that make you feel? And um, what does that mean to you to read all of that?
Okay. I'm getting emotional.
That's
Um,
okay.
um, okay. It means a lot to me. Um, Being a teacher is a very important thing to me. And it's very important that my students, well, I don't necessarily, well, yeah, it's not, I guess my philosophy is that I focus on the person. I want to teach the person.
Yeah.
And if I teach the person, then the musician learns as well.
Yeah.
And so learning to be a good person, learning to be um, uh, learning to have an open mind, being able to look at things from different standpoints, being able to problem solve, um, being able to, and then also in the process, learn about yourself to become a better person. That's kind of my goal for my students. And so when I get those letters, it's worth it.
That's fantastic. Which also is another great layup to the next question, which is as an educator, and you just pretty much mentioned what your teaching philosophy is,
Mhm,
um, which I love. I love that as a foundation, to help people be better people and be better humans and to learn to be kind and also maybe that applies to being kind to themselves in this
mhm,
very vulnerable developmental period in their lives. I'm
absolutely.
thinking especially if you're pre-college, you're dealing with high school, maybe even some elementary age people, and those are such vulnerable times in our
Mhm.
lives. So I'd like to know a little bit about how you view, I mean, do you approach each student with the idea of teaching them to be a performer or to think about performing? Because to me, performance can help
Mhm.
with a lot of things,
Mhm.
self-confidence. It can also prepare you to be a great teacher. There are lots of things performance can do. So how do you approach that? And in what maybe a few specific ways, how do you groom them to be good performers?
Yeah, well, I think the important word there is the word performance. You can, you know, performance can mean a lot of different things in a lot of different venues. For example, if I have a student who is interested in being a performance major, going to music school, then yes, there's a certain path that we take. In fact, yeah, I don't know if you noticed in my website, I have two tracks. There's the progressive track and there's the aggressive track. And
Ah,
the progressive track is for students are who want to just be a better player, better cellist, but they don't necessarily have musical aspirations for a career or going to music school. Well, we go through the same material. Um, uh, and the goal is to learn it and to go through that process. The aggressive track is for those who are more serious and want to be music majors. Now we use the same material, but it's more time sensitive.
yeah,
They have to have reach, well, from my standards, they need to reach a certain level of proficiency in order to, because I want them to be able to audition for any school they want to and be accepted. um, and so that's something in terms of the performing aspect of it. Um, I think that's what is necessary. You have to go through a certain battle of scales, arpeggios, etudes, exercises, solo pieces, in order to achieve that certain level. Um, but then there's also the student who goes through these scales, arpeggios, etudes, and exercises, and they feel great. They don't go to music school. And there's also that third student who you really encourage and, well, I think you maybe should. You should consider a music major.
yeah, 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 yeah.
And then
That too.
and yeah, and then they're like, I don't think so. And so, I've had several in that realm, and I totally, I totally am supportive of whatever they want to do. And I say, well, we need as many people in the audience with the season tickets as we need on stage as well.
Exactly,
So,
exactly.
so I need you, so yeah, you can definitely, and definitely enjoy your life, enjoy cello, make it a lifetime hobby. That's what the proficiency is about. Um, but I want to see you in that audience next concert.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that brings me also to another point. Even though you're not teaching at the university level, you're preparing
Mhm,
people for that if that's what they want to do. And so I guess what I want to ask is I had an experience where I was accepted into a performance program and
mhm,
then I think because I had some performance anxiety issues, it was really hard for me to get the support um, from some of the teachers. And then there were other teachers who really believed in me and really saw the musicality I had, all the things I had deeper, but others who judged me on that performance anxiety level. So
Hmm.
this is a tricky question. What what is there about a student that lets you know? I know obviously the skill set, obviously, but is there something beyond just the technical skill that lets you know a student probably is destined for a career? And what is there a student who thinks they want a career whom you will encourage to a point and kind of reassess that capability as you go along so that that
Hmm.
dream may be supported until one of you says, this isn't what I thought it was going to be, and blah, blah, blah. So, does that make
Yeah,
sense?
yeah. I mean, I can give you three examples.
Okay.
Um, when I was, I did teach for 15 years on the college level, and served in administrative positions as well. Um, one one student I had, and this was my first year teaching. I inherited this class of students, so I didn't hear their auditions. And so I inherited this class. And so one student came in and she could barely tune her instrument.
Wow.
Yeah, it was really, yeah, it was, I was just gobsmacked that someone would allow entrance, yeah, and entrance to someone like this. And um, so we worked for a while, and so I asked her, so what are your aspirations? And she told me what she wanted to continue music, and she wanted to go to grad school in music, get her master's, and continue into a career in music. And so in working with her, she had an amazing work ethic. When no one else was in the practice rooms, I could hear one single cello sound coming out, and it was her.
Yeah.
And so I knew that she would work. And so at my college, all of my students were also my advisees. And so I was able to sit down with her and say, well, I, if you want it, it's going to be a really, really hard uphill battle.
Mm-hmm.
Are you ready for it?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
She said, yeah. She said, yeah. So, and for 4 solid years, she practiced like nobody's business. Can I tell you, she went from not being able to tune her instrument to a senior recital that included a Bach suite, fourth cello suite, Shostakovich sonata, and I can't remember the other piece. There was a contemporary piece that she played, and everyone was, I mean, jaws were dropping to the floor
I love
because
that. I love that.
because
That's
yeah,
amazing.
yeah.
Yeah.
So that's one, where the desire is there, and if she wanted it, I was her biggest cheerleader.
Yeah.
I was there. Now the second example is kind of in the middle. Um, this student um played played well, um, but she just did not have the work ethic
Mm.
that was necessary. I don't know. Maybe this can be edited out, but but the generation that was told, "Oh, you're wonderful. You're just wonderful. Everything you do is so great. Everything you do is so great," and it really wasn't. And so I had to be the one to let her know
Yeah.
that you're playing okay,
Yeah.
but if you don't really apply yourself
Yeah.
and really learn this material, you're not going to realize your professional goals
Mm-hmm.
in music.
Mm-hmm.
Now, and I asked the same question: do you want to do this? Because I will be behind you all the way.
Mm-hmm.
She took some time, thought about it, and decided no, it's
Yeah.
not what she wanted. And I said, well, that's absolutely fine. We can continue to take lessons. She actually, I advised her to have another advisor. Because I was in the School of Music, I advised her to have an advisor in the School of Arts and Sciences.
Yeah.
And so she was able to put together, she switched her degree to a Bachelor of Arts where she had two majors. And um, and so yeah, so she was able to realize her, realize her potential in another area.
Yeah.
So, and then the final one was the student who just came in eating, breathing, sleeping cello. She just was the most, she came in playing like major concertos and huge etudes and things. And I'm thinking, okay, this is going to be one heck of a roller coaster ride.
Yeah.
In terms of the repertoire she's going to learn. So she just blew through the program and I mean, everyone. I sometimes say, if my students aren't as prepared for their lessons, they make me sit on the edge of the seat because I'm wondering if they're going to be successful. And then sometimes they make me sit on the back of the seat because it's like, okay, they've learned they have the assignment, and it's all good.
Yeah.
Well, I was not only sitting on the back of my seat, I was reclining,
Oh my gosh.
with
Oh
her.
my gosh.
And
Yeah.
yeah, so in terms of the levels there, I think that just being true to the student, just being there, being a very understanding and listening ear, but then also being strong enough to tell them the truth
Yeah.
is very important.
Well, I really appreciate the gamut that you took us through there because, going back to my experience, I've had other teachers who believed in me from the get-go. I told them what I wanted. They check in with me. We talk about the process. I
Mhm,
say, what do I need to do to get from here to here? And, they're teachers who can say, the way you're playing that octave hurts my ears. And depending on the teacher, I could
right.
be so upset because I knew they were just trying to demean me and humiliate me. And then another teacher who says the same thing, knowing that that teacher fully supports me and is doing everything possible to help me achieve what I want.
Hmm.
That's their main goal. Obviously, there is a level of musicianship because they have a reputation to maintain that,
Right.
but through that encouragement, I have been able to record my own pieces. I have performed with symphony players in a chamber setting. I have, and now, there's potential for me to be recommended, by some of my teachers for other things. So that's kind of, one extreme to the other. And the fact that
Hmm.
I was able to do that to me is a stark example of how a supportive teacher can really groom a student, just like your first example. Maybe you don't feel it's not like your third example where it's immediate, but you can say,
Hmm.
okay, what do you want to do? I'm going to help you do it. And you see the potential because of the hard work or some other element. So I
Hmm.
really appreciate your talking about that because I think it's really vital for teachers, especially at the university level and high school level, um, to be focused on the student every bit as much as the quality of the
Hmm.
technical playing. So anyway,
Absolutely.
yeah, okay. So I guess this is kind of an extension. Maybe what kind of attributes do you see are necessary for a teacher? What are the things that you value from your teachers that you have carried on, and what are some of the things that maybe you wish you had been taught that perhaps you were not?
Hmm. Well, I think I'm gonna start with my pre-college teacher, my final pre-college. I actually had two pre-college teachers, three. Um, and my third one is the one I'm going to be talking about. He was extremely, extremely thorough. Um, not Probably not the most emotive person, but he was extremely kind, very nurturing, but very businesslike. Had sky high standards, and so I think that um, with regard to teaching and having that kind of quality, I think that's something that I aspire to have that kind of sky high standards, but then also being caring and nurturing and supportive. Um, uh, I think probably I can't honestly I can't think when you ask that question, I can't think of anything that I should have been taught that I wasn't. Um, I just wasn't that type of student. I was just like, okay, whatever you have, I'll just take,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And so I can't really say, well, you know, I looking back on it, I can't think of any stone that wasn't, you know, unturned, basically.
Okay.
Um, my well, my undergraduate teacher, who was also just really fabulous. He was more sensory and sound oriented, and so that's what I got. That's well, in addition to really nice add on to the foundation, technical foundation that he gave me, that my pre-college gave me. He added on this really incredible sound concept, and I think probably what I got, my takeaway from his style of teaching was um, I listened. He played and I listened.
Yeah.
And I could hear what he was doing. And he would explain what he was doing, but I could hear it too. And so that's what I do in my studio as well. And also he was in a very famous string quartet, and he would sometimes he had a Guarneri cello, and he also had a Stradivarius that was on loan to him from the Corcoran Art Gallery. His quartet had well, he was in the Cleveland Quartet. This was Paul Katz. He would sometimes have the Strat, sometimes have the Guarneri. And so he would demonstrate on these incredible instruments. I'm thinking,
Wow.
yeah, well, if I had that instrument, I could do the too. Then he'd take my instrument and do exactly the same thing. So I was like, okay, all right.
Blew that argument, didn't it?
Yeah, I know. I've got to do that. So actually, I do the same thing with my students too. I take their instrument and I show them exactly what I want them to do and the sound, and that it is possible to have that sound on it. And so, having that, giving me that possibility, the potential for my having the same thing that he had, was really kind of important there.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, those and then the last teacher I had for my master's, I think I attribute his style of teaching to the way that I teach now. He is extremely knowledgeable about the skeletal and muscular structures, and we would have lessons where he would explain to me why I was unsuccessful in doing a certain thing. It was because I was not positioning my shoulders right, or I wasn't positioning my elbow, or you know, when I didn't get that shift, it was because I was over rotating my shoulders. Every time I over rotate the shoulders, it's a different distance every time. So
Yeah.
that's why I'm
Yeah.
not able to get the shift. So just I think just pure logic was his kind of I got from him. You need to follow a certain course of actions to come at a certain result. And so there's a lot of logic in his teaching style. So I don't know if that answered your question or
No,
not,
it does. It
but
does. Yeah, it does. And I can relate to a lot of that myself because some of my best teachers have said that, adjust body position and adjust this or, you know, relax here, all of those different things. I mean, with voice, piano, even violin, I had that and that was all very, very helpful. So I feel like I've been very lucky in that regard as well. Gosh, I could talk to you all day.
yeah, this is fun.
Is this fun? I wanted to ask you very quickly, what are a couple of really fun things that you have coming up that you want to tell us about?
Mm. Well, you remember I told you I need to update my website. That's one of the things I need. What am I doing next month? Um, Well, I do. I think the next thing I have coming up is in February with the Color Music Festival. We have two concerts, two week long festival concerts coming up, and that's with the Festival Chamber Players as well. Um, the Cirrus Ensemble, I think, is having a concert in between the two color musics. So February is going to be a very, very busy month for me.
Sounds great. Yeah.
The repertoire has yet to be determined.
Uh-huh.
Um, uh, then actually, I'm self producing a recital in early summer,
Awesome.
and your piece is going to be on it.
Oh, I love it. I'm so excited. Thank you. Such a huge compliment. Thank you.
Yeah, oh, it's a beautiful piece. I'm so glad that you allowed me to play it. It was just
It
it's
was
just
such a
really
joy
beautiful
when you
piece.
interpreted. Thank you so much. Well, those are
So yeah,
really
so
exciting things.
that's what's happening.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, last little minute here.
Yeah.
What's a piece of advice or encouragement that you would give whoever's listening to this talk today?
Hmm. Well, I think that probably whatever you do, whether it's performing, whether it's teaching, whether it's totally unrelated to music, do it with joy. That has been another word that has kind of permeated my life in terms of that. There are lots of things, there are lots of expectations that were expected of, lots of people had expectations like if I'm going to be a musician, oh, well, then you should be a conductor because that's the top of the line. That's what you should be. No, I just want to play the cello. And then when I got to college, oh well, the pinnacle of higher education is administration. You should go for dean. You should go for, And so I was assistant dean for a while. I did what people expected, and no, I just want to play the cello. And so, um, and actually, I have a passion for teaching young kids too. And so that was something that I really enjoy and do enjoy. And so, finally, I'm in a place where I'm doing everything that I love, and and everything and everything has happened for a reason. And I'm basically living a life of joy now. And so I would encourage everyone to live your life with joy.
What a perfect way to close this out. Ken, thank you so much for being with us today. And thank you for listening. And stay tuned for our next talking shop. And I'll see you then.